Right now, there we go. All right. Good afternoon. Oh, no, it's not afternoon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chanel Alford. I'm the chair of the Equity Diversity Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to our Accessibility and Me workshop webinar, starring Patrick and Katie and Tina and myself. And we are very honored to have you here. Tina, you want to say a few words? Because I'm co-hosting with another wonderful committee.
So I'm Tina Coffey. I am the chair of the Education Committee, and we have a couple of our education folks on too to support us. And we're super happy to hear what Katie and Patrick have to share.
And then we're going to turn it over to you. Thank you guys both so much. And thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight. You are valuable to us and to Visti. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Katie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so again, thank you all for coming. This is a presentation that Patrick and I got to share at the Leading Ed Forum back in December, and it has been an evolving process. Neither of us claim to be like the utmost experts on any of this. We are constantly learning new things about accessibility, so we would love for this to be an interactive webinar. If you want to come off mute and kind of add anything that we are missing. We are constantly learning new things and evolving this presentation.
Absolutely. And it should be in the chat, and we'll make sure it appears there a couple times for you. But do know that Bitly is there. We are fully believe in making these things and not necessarily not trying for a pun here, but making the slides accessible to you so that you can pull those up if you need to make a copy so you can change fonts, change colors, things like that. We want you to have that. And we also have some links and things that are inside it. And again, they'll be put in the chat, but we also want to make sure that if you have the slides up, it's easier for you to click in the slides. We want you to be able to do that as well. All right, we'll go ahead and go to the first slide. So as we start to navigate these things, one of the big things, and I'm just going to call it the WCAG because that makes me chuckle. And obviously that stands for larger things. If you click on the link on the slides, and I'll throw this in the chat as well, it gives you a breakdown of what kind of started this conversation. And there's a little bit of a moving target, and we'll let you know that stuff as we go through. But you just have a short thing to fill out here, and then it will give you the information on those two things. And this website itself gives you a lot of different things around the ADA compliance, which is one of the pieces that we're bringing in here. And this was all started by initially these deadlines to have all of these things in place for your website. And we'll go through some of those requirements. But the DOJ initially said that it was by April 2026 if you had more than 50,000 population in your district, you had to have those things, and that would have been last month. You had to meet these accessibility guidelines. If you had less than that, you had till April 2027. Fairly recently, they actually extended that so that it is now April 2027 to meet those for those large divisions, those large districts. And the smaller districts are going to get you out to that April 2028, which is great. It gives us more time to make sure we're in that compliant place and making sure that we're getting to, and we'll pull up one of these links here in a second, but the top level, the highest level you want to get to, there's a range. You don't necessarily have to get there, but we also don't want to shoot for the floor of these requirements, meaning you don't want to just have it be kind of okay. You want to make sure you're getting your websites, getting your content to a spot where it is fully accessible for everybody and it's not a challenge for somebody to get to that content. But before we jump into that, one thing I do want to point out, because I was in an ITRT meeting, I think a couple weeks ago with the people at the state, and that's where Mr. Billy Mays, RIP, comes in here. But wait, there's more. Because on the Virginia side here, when we look into the legislative information system, this one here, and I will zoom in a little bit so my share is a little bigger, you're going to see we still have this regular session legislation that was passed. And you'll note here in this last part here, that it delayed the effective dates till the April 26th, April 2027. So there's kind of a mixed bag that we're seeing right now as far as the Virginia side of things to know, did we get that extension or do we now have that extension at federal level, but we still need Virginia to do it? So our best recommendation at this point is to still be making progress. I think that VDOE, the Virginia side, will catch up. Maybe our legislatures will, maybe if they're super happy, they'll fully fund the bonuses they want us to do as well. But if nothing else, they could pass this and help us out. But if you come to the websites, and you can do anything here, if you do we'll just search the WCAG 2.2. If you open that, most of these top sites are going to get you to this w3.org. And I'll go ahead and pull this link and throw it into the chat for you too, just for ease of access. But this gives you a lot of the different information. One of the most beneficial ones, and then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you can really kind of get down into the weeds. But if you click on the one that is the comparison with 2.1, which was the previous number, you'll be able to see here that it's going to start walking you through what it means by making different things accessible. And as you come down through any one of these, you can click and see the guidelines spelled out. If you're posting videos up, if it's audio only, video only, they have success criteria for all of these different things so that you can start to see what is the AA level, what does the AAA level look like, and what does that level A look like as you go down through. So you can start to get an idea of what those things look like. And if you're not your website person, I would keep in mind that a lot of these guidelines are around the website. That's probably the biggest forward-facing thing that a district has. But these tenets and some of the things we're going to talk to you about are not just website things. Accessibility is something that we've really started to try getting in front of our educators of thinking, try to think with accessibility from the very beginning. All the different things you're creating, the different things you're putting out, the content you're putting in front of students, try to plan with accessibility, create with accessibility in mind, because a lot of the different accessibility pieces that you might include aren't going to just help those students that really desperately need it to be able to access the content. It can really be beneficial for just about everybody in the class. So if you're not already, you definitely want to start becoming familiar with these so that you can get that work going if it's not already, to know that you're going to be able to meet those deadlines and be able to reach out for some help from others if you need to.
And so the name of this webinar is Accessibility in Me. We realize that everyone is kind of on their own journey with making content accessible. So we kind of wanted to set the foundation with the POUR principle. This was taken, I made a note of it, from the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. If you click that link that says resource, it'll bring you right to their website. But those four big pillars, the first one is just perceivable. So when we are creating content, is it something that our users can see and hear? The important word there being and. So this means if you have a picture in your Google slideshow, it has an alt caption so that if my screen reader needs to know what's in that picture, it can show me if I'm not able to see it. If I am creating a video, like this webinar, we're going to need closed captions for it in order to be compliant. And granted, what we're talking about today is our digital material, but it also, with anything that is tactile, making sure that that is also accessible as well. So that's the P. Operable. This is the tab challenge. I learned about this in a webinar when I was doing research for the original presentation, and learned about how difficult it is to create a website that you can navigate with just tab and enter. And it is really fun. So like I was playing around on my school division's website, and they did a great job. I can get to everything on that website just using tab and enter. I can even, expand menus and make sure that everything has that clear formatting so that if I don't have a mouse, if I don't have a touchpad, I can still interact with all of the content. Understandable. We have many, many, many users who speak many different languages. And we want to make sure that when we are creating content, we are using plain language so that if it is being translated, if it is being interpreted, whoever is receiving that information is going to get the exact same takeaways as the native language speakers. Also, kind of ties in with operable, making sure our menus are consistent so that I know if I click here, it's going to bring me here and it's not going to maybe send me someplace else. And then the final one, probably one that is kind of our moving target as we talk through this evening, is robust. So technology is constantly evolving, as we all know. And so we're making sure that as these new innovations and updates are coming out, that anything we have published is still accessible.
And that's one of the things that I want to point out with this slideshow. It's all pretty recent, so we should be good on different things. But if you ever hit dead links in different things, a good practice on most of the websites, and I know VSTE has a few different ways to contact. When you hit anything like that, please report it to the school. Report it to, if you're just going through something at school, send a line to your ITRT and say, hey, I tried this link, it doesn't work, or it opens this thing and the captions aren't working. Because sometimes people didn't necessarily not do it. It might have stopped working. They might have used a tool that shut down, something like that. So we all have a little bit of a role there to not call people out. That's not at all what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is just giving them a heads up that, hey, you might want to check this and see, is that thing not working anymore that you were playing with? And something that we want to do as we go through some of these tips and resources that will follow on the slides after this, we want to try and make sure this is as interactive as possible and give you some hands-on time to play with these things as we go through. So what we did was make you a little bit of a challenge, and you don't have to necessarily do both, but we wanted you, based on maybe the tool you might use more, or the one you might want to play with because you haven't done as much with some of the accessibility features in that tool, we wanted you to be able to at least choose from a couple. So this box that you see here on the left will open a Google Doc, and each one of these is a template link. So when you pull it up, you'll be able to see that you have the use template up here at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and click that on doc. And then I'll come back. Our second option is the slideshow here. And I did link it to the image as well as the text. If you're there, and our amazing hosts are putting all the links in the chat too. So any way that it's easier for you, please go ahead and pull it up. But the next one goes to the slideshow. And again, you do not have to do both. You're more than welcome to have each of them if you wish. I enjoyed not only creating them and then breaking them, because it was actually a unconscious thing that I was automatically not doing certain things. So I had to go back and break things that I fixed without knowing I fixed them. And then I did some Googling. I'm like, if I was going to try and make something very inaccessible, what would I do? And added a couple more wrinkles in. But these are very much examples of things that we should probably not do, but are things that, as you've seen things, and please don't put this in the chat, don't toss anybody's names out or anything, but you might be thinking in your background like, oh, this looks like exactly what so-and-so made the other day. If you need, you can just send them a link like, hey, I went to this awesome webinar. I think it would benefit everybody, kind of a thing. But here's a couple that you can play with. And again, we're going to go through a few different things that will hopefully give you some tips and ideas of how you might correct some of these. And that's going to start on this slide. That is a 4 big content fixes. And again, just in case you missed it, one of those links should open this doc, and it will give you all the options. You should have everything there. And then you should have this slideshow as well. So your goal is, as we go through, try and be correcting a few things, because we're fully telling you, so it's not a pop quiz. We'll launch it out a little bit towards the end here and see, what did you find? What did you fix? What maybe did you find that wasn't part of one of the big 4 that we might hit?
So as Patrick just mentioned, in general, we have these kind of big 4 buckets of like really, really easy changes that you can integrate starting tomorrow, is kind of the idea. So Pat, if you would go to the next slide. The first one, and I think this might be, yeah, is just like semantic structure. So, regardless if you are a Microsoft or a Google district, both softwares have those built-in heading structures. So, there's this myth that if I, put bold, larger font size, different color for every time I want a heading, that's a heading. And if I do maybe italics in a different color, that's going to be a subheading. That's not how it works. Pat can probably show us in a minute. He's really good at showing how you can actually set that up in a Google document so that no matter what file you open, you will automatically have all of your text sets. You can customize them, you can change them, you can make them however you want. But the most important thing is actually using those actual heading 1, 2, 3, 4 in that descending order. Later on, we'll actually listen to a screen reader trying to read content that is not in that correct format. And then the other thing is lists. This has been my biggest struggle because I'm a hyphen girl. I do the hyphen. It's right there. It makes my list for me. Well, unfortunately, a screen reader cannot read a hyphen list. You need to be going in and using those page breaks, make them however you want. I did notice I need to do some practicing. I noticed with Google Docs lately, though, that when I do a hyphen and space, it will indent it now. Um, but if you don't leave that space, it's just going to read it as one solid thing. Um, so those are kind of those big ones there.
Yep. And I'll jump in here real
Mm.
quick before we go to the second one. I'm gonna just bring up the document and you'll see that we have things that look like headers, but you'll notice if I click in this document, if you pay attention right here where it says normal text on my screen, you'll notice no matter where I click, that's not changing, which means we did that kind of quick piece of we just bold it, we made it a little bigger. It looks like a heading, but it is not one. To do that, you'd have to come into this list that I was showing before, and you'll see that you have title, you have subtitle, but you'll notice all of mine are in a different font as well. These are all in Lexan, which is actually a research-based, easier to read font. And what you can do is set up a document, go ahead and go down through and say that I want this to be this font and I want to make that heading 1. And you can say after you apply the heading 1, you change your font, everything like that, say update heading 1 to match. So I'll go ahead and just apply this and you can see that it did my heading 1. And then I would say update it to match. So I know it's using this font. If I click, I see heading 1. And I can set that for the title, heading, go down through. And the nice piece, the part that I love is coming then down into the options and doing save as my default styles. And that will make it so that that Lexand is going to show up in all of the documents I create. I can always make it this, apply title. It's going to make it Lexand, going to make it that size every time and save that for me. One of the things I also wanted to point out in slides, a lot of times, and Gemini does this, so I wanted to point that out. If you have Gemini create a slideshow, it creates them, but it does not use layouts. It looks like it uses layouts, but it's just text boxes. And that's the same thing when we think about accessibility. If we don't go to layouts, and it's not one of these slides here where you actually see a title and it labeled as a title, when things come through, they're not going to see it as a title either. It's just going to be a larger font. So keep in mind that you also want to be thinking about these different layerings, the different headings, things like that. You want to think about that in slides as well and make sure that you're using a title on a slide so that if it's coming through, people know when that slide has changed.
All right, and then the next one are making sure that we are building in color contrast. So 1 in 12 men are colorblind, and I believe it's 1 in 37 women. And I know as I've gotten older, this has actually been a challenge for me. That bright green default in Google is really hard to read on a white background. So we want to make sure that when we are picking all our fun colors in Canva or Google or whatever software you're using, that there is a color contrast. Canva has a built-in contrast checker that you can use. It also has recommended colors. So if you're not really sure where to start, it'll even give you different sets of colors that work well together. And there are additional external resources that can help you. And then another big one for me, and really for a lot of my friends, has been making sure that whenever you are hyperlinking text, you should be able to block out everything that is not in the hyperlinked text and understand where that link is going to bring you. So I know when I first started learning how to hyperlink text, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I thought I was so cool and I would write to my teachers, blah, 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 click here to learn more. That is so, so bad now. We should not be doing that. We want to make sure that everyone understands kind of where that link is bringing us. And I've also noticed now that I've integrated this into my own practice, it looks a lot better because it's just really clear where everything needs to be. And I don't need to be kind of reworking sentences and finding ways to get it to fit. So those are two big ones.
Yep. And just to point out one piece for you in the world of linking and things, you'll probably see it in a number of emails. People will come up, they'll go to share, they'll say copy the link, and I'll just throw it in my sample here, but you get a link that looks like this, and you do have that option to hit tab with when you're in a doc, and it'll clean it up a bit, and then you can actually see what it looks like. But you don't typically get that necessarily in an email format. So what I've started to do is once it does that, I'll let it make the link automatically, then come in to edit, and you can copy and paste the doc from here. But sometimes even your doc title might not necessarily be descriptive enough. So you might want to come in and say something like, this is a template for accessibility doc or something like that.
And Patrick, you just reminded me another big, big no-no, which I am still working on. We never want to be using the complete URL. So I didn't include this in the videos, but if you ever listen to a screen reader, it reads out every single letter. So we do want to be doing what Patrick is demonstrating here, where we're adding a title so that a screen reader would not be reading out the entire URL of a website.
And a lot of times it'll read every one of the characters as well. So if you ever need something to try and help convince people that this is a really good thing to do, that is one of my go-to examples, is having it read a long URL to people and try and ask them, okay, you got it, type it out for me and let's go. I can't do that. Somebody might be able to, but I cannot do that. And then that brings us over to number 3, which I think is a really good thing that is, again, I think all of these apply to everybody, but alt text is something that I think is really valuable for everybody. Not only is it vital for people to understand what's in that image for the people that cannot see it, but I think it's also one of those where as you're designing, as you're putting slides and things together, for me, as I'm building websites, whatever it might be, when I start to craft that alt text, that really makes me take a close look at the image I'm putting in. Does that image add something? Is it valuable? Is there too much text? Is there too much information in that image that is then making it so that they're going to have a lot of alt text? But at the same time, if you're getting a lot of alt text to an image, to me, that tells me that person would probably naturally feel like they're missing a lot. That image has a lot. I'm missing out on something really crucial. So my mind starts to look at it from that design side, as well as, is this really meaningful as it goes through? So some golden rules for alt text. And alt text, again, is image based. You're basically telling the screen reader what the image is. So think about that in documents, slideshows, websites, anywhere that you might do something like that. Alt text should be applied. You want to make sure that it's concise and describes the content. So if you're going to do alt text for this, you would want to think about what is in that image. How can you describe it quickly, but also give them a full idea of what the image is? And you can, if you know that image is really just there to look nice, you can just say that it is a decorative image. If it's not actual content, the alt text would be to say it's a decorative image. So people know that I'm not missing something with that picture. You want to think about reducing redundancy. So automatically when the alt text hits, you only apply alt text to images. So if something has alt text, they know it's an image. So you don't have to say this is an image of so-and-so or whatever, or a picture of. It already knows that because it automatically triggers that in the system when it sees an image. And the one before I started researching this, before I read different things, I didn't know is that you should put a punctuation at the end. So if you're describing something, you're using more than one small statement or something, you want to put a period at the end so that it pauses. And for this one, for instance, if I just said it's hands over a keyboard typing in alt text for an image of pizza on a screen, if I just made that all one big thing, it's going to do that. But if I want to pause when it says hands over a keyboard, I could put a period there. Above the keyboard is this. It just makes it easier to digest as that screen reader goes through. And as we know with anything that might be done with AI, including YouTube's auto captions of videos, which is not the same thing as alt text, but that's one of the big examples that I know people can relate to. And anytime AI generates something, whether it's your lesson plans, whatever it might be that you're doing, we all know we need to verify that. We need to go in and check what it did and make sure that it's correct. Is it spelled right? Is it using the right words as far as sometimes it might caption it with the British version of certain words versus the English versions, things like that. You know who's in your classroom, you know who might be seeing this. You want to make sure that that alt text is going to make sense for them. And just to show real briefly in the world of slides and in most things, if you right click on an image in a tool, that's normally where you're going to be able to find alt text come up. And here you're going to see that, ooh, I didn't break this one well enough. It actually has good alt text. But you can see it's a small butterfly egg on a leaf, ended with a period. And
In
you
your
could,
defense, though, Patrick, most of, well, all of the pictures, if you grab it directly from Google, from the stock and web, they will have an alt text, which is really nice.
I think I went through on my good one and did it, and then I didn't come through and take it out. Ooh, here's a bad one. This one just says image.png. There we go. I did break at least one. Maybe I did that on purpose. I don't remember. I'm 2 weeks into brand new baby brain, so those of you with kids will know what that is. Sometimes your brain is right there doing everything you want it to do, and other times you're like, I don't know what day of the week it is, and I'm not sure where I am anymore. But you can see in the dock, same thing. If I right click my image, I get it to come up here. And in no way am I saying don't use AI to help you. Sometimes it can be a struggle to do alt text, especially as you're learning. It could be really good to do something like that. And I did want to touch on a couple things just before I move past more. Karen had a question in the chat about Canva and the fact that their slides don't necessarily have the layout options. One of the things that I've been doing in Canva is making sure that when I go to that adding text piece, that I'm being very meaningful about clicking where it says to add a title, add a heading, add a subheading, because those are the pieces that should add some of those elements in versus just add a text box. It doesn't make it quite as easy as the Google side where you can do a layout and it's automatically going to tag things a certain way, but make sure you're clicking on it in those exact places. The second question for the GrackleDoc side, I am not sure if they've done a 2.2. If they've not, I'd be very surprised if it's not up to date soon. I would read some of the documentation on their website. It was a pretty recent change as far as them pushing the deadlines back. And GrackleDocs has traditionally been pretty good about keeping things up to date. So I'd be surprised if they're not already up there, but I would double check on their side just to be sure. And Stephanie tucked in another one for Canva too. All right. And as we come into our a next piece here, one of the things that you want to be thinking about, and this is kind of, and we titled it here, a systemic risk. A lot of times we're using a number of different tools, and we might really like the way one tool designs, for instance, Canva, and we really like that, but ultimately we need to get into the slides because that's what our students are most used to accessing, things like that. One thing that we have noticed is that if we create those slides, we do all that work, we add all the accessibility things in, we have that alt text, things like that. If you download that Canva as a PowerPoint, it strips those things out. So you want to be thinking about ultimately what tool are you going to end up in? And that is where I would spend my time making it the most accessible. And a lot of times you won't necessarily be going in and out of a lot of tools with some of these, but just think about that in the workflows you have. Do you have anything where you start in Canva and then take it somewhere else? Have you checked to see if that alt text and things are still there? So you want to think about those pieces because it could be perfect in one, then you come to the next one and it's all gone. And you would have thought it was already there. So if you get called out on it later, you would have thought, oh, it's all, I know I went through every slide, I did everything, but it would instantly be gone depending on how you're doing. So as it says there, always make sure that you check it, just like we talked about with the AI piece, where we're always going to check each piece that it goes through. Make sure as you go through, go from tool to tool. And I would say even just double check as you go from one thing to where it's actually being pushed out. If you have the opportunity to log in as somebody else or go to the website as somebody not logged in, check it as a student. Always take that next level if you can, just to make sure, is it working the way I thought it was? If I have a screen reader read that, does it sound the way that I meant it to? Are the pauses in the right place? Okay.
So you might be wondering, well, okay, but what does this actually sound like? So we have 3 short videos, just of some examples of what screen readers sound like. And the first one is, this is what a screen reader sounds like when it tries to read a PDF that has been stripped of its accessibility features.
Example. This PDF was saved using print and then save as PDF. When saving a PDF this way, it can make it so the PDF is one giant image. The screen reader won't be able to read it at all. Let's hear what this sounds like.
Window. Alert. Document unavailable. Pane. You are currently on a pane. Alert. Document unavailable. Pane. Content is empty.
Sorry, when it said pain, I thought, yes, this is painful. But I don't think that's what it was telling me. But that's what it clicked in for me.
Same. And like, I understand that I am laughing because we hope like we're not creating content that is like this, but we understand that we need to know better and we need to do better. So we're not going to take a PDF and make it inaccessible. The next one is text formatting. So this is what we touched on earlier, where just changing the font really doesn't do anything. And this is going to show you kind of how a screen reader reads those different and then what it does when it gets to a real heading.
Boldface, capitals, capitals, underline, underline, italics, italics, not a real heading. Heading 1, a real heading.
So there we go. And with a document that has been formatted appropriately, it will do that for all of the headings and all of that formatting. And then this last one is just silly. I love using emojis. And I love reading like on social media, people taking screenshots of like their grandma who just learned about emojis and sends them 500 in a row. This is what it sounds like if you have them read out loud.
Frame I red heart emojis beaming face with smiling eyes grinning face with big eyes face with tears of joy grinning face with big eyes grinning face with big eyes grinning face with big eyes, but let's keep them down waving hand because they are very annoying weary face dizzy face person gesturing no for screen reader users smiling face with halo baby angel light skin tone baby angel medium dark skin tone baby angel dark skin tone baby angel medium skin tone. Relieved face folded hands here no evil monkey.
So a little rough. And again, like it says here, we're not saying don't do emojis, but maybe just not all the time. All
And
right.
before we jump to our next slide here, I do want to address the one thing, Karen, you talked about these shortened links. What I will typically do, and especially if I'm emailing them, if I was going to email the link to this slideshow, for instance, instead of that bit.ly link that I put in the chat, I would have the title of the slideshow, and I would put then behind that scenes in the actual link part. That's where I would put the bit.ly, but the link itself would not be bit.ly dot anything. That would be that written out word, that phrase that really tells them what it is. And then just like the long link, I would put that bit.ly behind the scenes as well, because unless you put a long bit.ly, it's not going to be descriptive either. It's not going to read nicely. So even with those shortened links, you still want to use that idea of doing that piece so that it does level up that accessibility. Okay.
All right, and we do have a little thinking routine to kind of close us out. So we're going to hopefully move from crisis to readiness. And if everything we have shared with you so far is making you a little nervous or apprehensive, hopefully the next slide will help you kind of compartmentalize and realize that all of this is very doable. So we're going to use the stop, start, continue. So first, please stop relying on any vendors who are not, I call it WCAG, compliant. And you can reach out to them and ask them for their compliancy reports. I did this with Seesaw the other day. They responded immediately and they gave me the entire thing. So granted, not everyone from your department, from your team needs to be doing this, but maybe putting one person in charge of making sure, like, hey, let's make sure that all these companies that we give a lot of money to are actually in compliance. And if they're not, which they should be, what can we do instead? And then hopefully after tonight, you will start designing with accessibility in mind. We said this from the very start. It is so much easier to just build things with accessibility at the forefront of your brain than having, an entire slide deck and then having to go back and add alt text, add headings, do all of that. And then hopefully you all will continue to use those built-in accessibility checkers. Microsoft has it native in the platform, and then using extensions such as Grackle Docs for anything in Google.
Absolutely. And as we round out the bottom, it would not be a slideshow that I have touched if it didn't have a bunch of links in it. And we tried to follow our best practice here to give you some of those different things. So you can see we have a few different things. This one-page checklist is really nice to check out. You can go more in depth. Then you have a few things, even just accessibility basics, that aim center link, and everything down through, including things like task cards, bringing in and connecting the idea of UDL with accessibility. We wanted to make sure those links were there as well. And if you've never seen it before, this is one of the few that I'll open up. Understood.org is a really good website for a ton of different topics. They give you a really nice snapshot of the topic, and then you can click on anything to get even more information on it. And there's usually a few different videos and things that can help you really kind of quickly understand and then be able to dive in more so even after the fact. So one of the things before I move us into the slides anymore, I do want to open it up, at least here briefly, to anybody. I know we looked at the alt image, we looked at some of the text. Was there anything else in the doc, if anybody played with the doc, that you saw, this is something I would really fix, or this doesn't seem accessible to me, or how do you make this thing more accessible? Does anybody have anything they want to shout out? And I know it's kind of late on a Thursday too. Colors, yeah. So a lot of times if it's color coded, if somebody is colorblind, they're not necessarily going to know what's what. So make sure if you have a chart like this, make sure it's clearly labeled and you've added information to it so they can know not just Post-its is yellow and it's 20, but Post-its was 20 in January. Markers were, looks like about 18 in January. Yep. Title as an image. So up here at the top, it looks nice, but I would bet there's no alt text. So my screen reader wouldn't help me there. Tables is a horrid thing. It is a four-letter word in the world of accessibility. You can play with them a bit, you can try and help it out, but you'll notice we also have black on top of a dark blue background, which is also not great. So it's something that as you think about it, see, does it have to be a table? Can you present it in a way that might be a little better, a little more accessible, things like that. And this one was, the slides were probably a little more obvious than some of the docs ones. But did anybody play with the doc and want to shout, or sorry, the slides and want to shout anything out there before we move to fully wrapping up? I had fun breaking this one. Color contrast. Yeah, it's not the best. Got some sweet script fonts going on as well. And just because I put this as a template, I wanted to break something else that I thought could be, if I was sharing this as a template, something that has hit me as well is this piece of layering as well. So you notice this actually has that color gradient for the background is actually on top of everything. So I can't get to the font, I can't change anything. So as a coach, as somebody that might be sending people templates, you also want to be thinking about that side. If I'm sending this to somebody and I want them to easily be able to edit it, have I laid that foundation for it? The layout of text, yeah, was this a header? Did I use the right thing? I have a line here that should probably be on the other side of things. I am pretty good at breaking. It was fun too. And here you can see it's just a little bit different color, but the body text is actually smaller. So if it was meant to be a visual cue, it doesn't work there very well either. And then one of my favorites is the a million colors font scenario, which is not a dream for about anybody. And then if it's Halloween, this is a favorite font, but it can be somewhat hard to read too. And an extension that I would recommend too, and I didn't put it on here for this one, but there's a number of extensions out there that can help you as far as once it's clicked, it shows you what it looks like if that person is colorblind to that color or kind of the most prevalent colors, and you can see how your design looks for that disability. Always something good to check out and just see, well, my logo is this color, this color, this color. How good does that look for some people? And obviously it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but think about some of those things as you're checking out. And I hope that as we've gone through, you got to play with some of the docs or the slides, you got to fix some things, maybe picked up a few things new. I know that every time we present, every time we are out in person and being able to connect, we always learn something new. So I'm sure this will be talked about here in a moment, so I won't spoil it too much, but definitely make sure that you reach out to VSTE, reach out to us on social media. Our email addresses are out and about different places too. Reach out anytime, not just for questions, things like that, but if you have some tips and things for us, you found a great new resource, send it our way so we can showcase it or reach out. Maybe you can do a guest blog post or something for us so we can get the good word out to everybody. And I think with that, we are back over to Miss Chanel, maybe Tina, to help wrap us up. We appreciate you guys doing all the work in the background with the links as well.
Thank you so much, Katie and Patrick. That was awesome. I've learned a whole bunch of tips that I can take back to my teachers.
Yes, I agree as well. I think I saw a couple of things I thought I was doing correctly, and I think I'm doing incorrectly. So thank you very much for that. But thank you all very much for coming tonight. And we wanted to say a couple things about Visti and invite you to our upcoming events, if that's okay. If you have a few more moments, you can give us about 2 more minutes, and then we'll let you go. Our organization, we are the premier technology organization for educators in the state of Virginia, not just for technology, but for everything, overall professional learning, collaboration, leadership. You should join Visti just to make friends from all across the district, all across the state, so that you can learn more things, learn what other districts are doing, and it's very helpful to know in your field. Like Tina said, it's free. I was about to offer you the free membership of VSTE as well. We have a couple of events coming up. We have the AI Educator Summit in Chester, Virginia on June 24th. There's a link there. Leading Ed Forum for all our superintendents and IT administrators. So if you are one of those or you know one, please invite them to that as well. And then we have Discover, Play, and Learn, sponsored by VSTE VA, Reversa, and Pittsco. And we're going to bring a lot of toys together for computer science and play with things. But we're also going to talk about our challenges and curiosities. So we're really looking forward to having those events as well. And I believe we have another slide. Yes, the AI in Action Summits. If you have not been to one, we had ours in Region 3 a few months back. Adam came and he presented. If you don't know Adam, he's a very well-known AI educator across the country. So he came and showed us a bunch of cool and neat stuff that we could do with educators. And then the event of the year, Be There or Be Square, is the VSTE Conference, December 6th to the 8th, 2026. If you haven't registered yet, please register for the VSTE Conference, register your district, and also proposals are open. So if you'd like to present, share your knowledge with us, please come on and apply to present and come on and hang out with us. I know the DJ, she's pretty cool.
She is pretty
Shameless
cool.
plug.
Yes, we'd love to have you there, and we would love to have anyone that wants to present. That would be great. So the last slide has everybody's email addresses if you'd like to contact anyone after this slideshow is over or after this presentation is over. So once again, thanks everyone for coming out. We'll stick around for a few minutes if you have any questions. And thank you again, Patrick and Katie, for such a great presentation and all the wonderful resources you shared.
Yeah.
You want to stop the recording?
Yes, I do. There we go.